celebrate our grand opening in downtown Dillon, we are having a spooky special in October. Want to become a live stream sponsor at a great price? Give us a call at 406-660-7041.
I'm Ron Carroll, owner of Emporium 406, where you'll find unique vintage and contemporary goods. Products like autographed celebrity memorabilia and framed vintage posters. We also have a magic shop, where you'll find the new children's book, Marvelous Marvin's Magical Moment. At Emporium 406, you'll also find a full line of Made in Montana products and home decor. Items such as painted windows, barnwood and tin goods, fleece blankets, designer pillows, jewelry, small furniture, and so much more. Emporium 406 at 23 South Idaho Street, Dillon's premier Made in Montana gift store.
Celebrate our grand opening in downtown Dillon, we are having a spooky special in October. Want to become a live stream sponsor at a great price? Give us a call at 406-660-7041.
I'm Ron Carroll, owner of Emporium 406, where you'll find unique vintage and contemporary goods. Products like autographed celebrity memorabilia and framed vintage posters. We also have a magic shop, where you'll find the new children's book, Marvelous Marvin's Magical Moment. At Emporium 406, you'll also find a full line of Made in Montana products and home decor. Items such as painted windows, barnwood and tin goods, fleece blankets, designer pillows, jewelry, small furniture, and so much more. Emporium 406 at 23 South Idaho Street, Dillon's premier Made in Montana gift store.
Along the way, there will be no changes made today. This is just an opportunity for the public to comment on what they would like to see. With that said, we'll go ahead and open it up for public comment.
Mr. Chair, I have a question about scheduling.
Sure.
The minutes of the last zoning commission indicated that this public hearing was going to be delayed until October 16th due to a problem as far as advertising the hearing. But obviously that has changed. Was that because the advertising problem went away, or what?
There was an error in the minutes.
There was an error in the minutes. Yeah. So there was an error in the minutes.
There was an error in the minutes? Yes. Okay, thank you. I've got some comments, but if anybody else wants to start it, that's fine.
No, you can go ahead. Yep.
They need to make sure they state their name.
Yeah, if you could just state your name.
My name is Rich Wassels, spelled W-A-S-S-A-L-L. I'm a member of the Dillon City Council, but I'm not speaking as a member of the Dillon City Council, simply as a private citizen. I guess I would encourage the commission to address the issue of what is the genesis of this proposal. There's nothing really out there in public in terms of whose idea was this, who started it, who's behind it, and how did it come together, who drafted it, etc. So I'd suggest that a little bit of transparency on that would go a long way. I do have some concerns about it. I'll skip to the chase. I've not made up my mind. I'm for it, against it. It's too early in the process for that, but my concerns are that it's directed towards, specifically towards the potato seller, at least initially. And if so, whether it would affect the compatibility of the potato seller with the surrounding neighborhoods. The potato seller, with the exception of their boundary with the railroad, is surrounded by residential neighborhoods. I'm also, I guess, wondering how this would affect the existing operations of the potato seller, as far as what they do, what they can do, what they can't do. And I guess the specific concern is I'm unfamiliar with their current practices as far as the storage of both fertilizers, though I've never heard of their doing so. And if that is the case, that they're not doing that currently, if this change in the application of the agricultural district would allow them additional latitudes in terms of what their operations could encompass, and specifically whether or not that would include bulk fertilizers. If it would, or if it would act to expand their existing operations, if they have any existing operations in bulk fertilizers. The obvious concerns would be the following. That represents a potential hazard because of the adjoining stream. And if Murphy showed up and the containment of those fertilizers entered that stream, it could have severe consequences, not just for the life in the stream, but downstream in terms of the beaverhead. There's an additional concern, obviously, if you're getting into bulk fertilizers, as far as explosion potential, fire risk, and the risk of potential toxic fumes. I've been contacted in bulk by email by one citizen of my ward, though I'm not speaking as a councilman. But they expressed this concern that the truck traffic could increase to the potato seller, and that that would be particularly germane if the uses of the potato seller were expanded by the provisions of this district. Lastly, I guess the concern would be that if that's the case, that those increased operations would represent a significant night time light and noise pollution potential for the neighborhoods. And that's pretty much all I've got to say at the moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. I guess I would just clarify here real quick. What we're doing here is we're not looking to add any in particular part of the city into this designation at this point. There is no area that is called for agriculture bulk storage. There's no designated district for that. So that is what we're looking at adding to the title, and then we will have further discussion, obviously, as we go about the specific area you're talking about. Could come up as part of that discussion, but what we're talking about is just adding this to it, and we're trying to get public comments specific to adding this this district, creating a district for agricultural bulk storage zone. So with that said, I just don't want to get on too far off base for what we're trying to do here. We're just trying to collect comment on if we were to add this district or this label, title, whatever you want to call it, to Title 17. So we'll go ahead and open that back up for more public comment.
Ed Mooney. I guess you about have to pull these thick ones down to be heard. Try to socially distance from the microphone. Before I start, though, I'll probably forget if I don't do it. I'll give you a copy for the minutes. Okay, like I said, I'm Ed Mooney, and I've looked over this proposed addition to Title 17, and I'll just read my letter, and I'll maybe hit on a couple of points on the attachment to the letter, which has to do with somewhat editorial recommendations, as well as some questions about definitions and those kinds of things. So there's quite a bit of detail on the attachment, but I'll read the letter pretty much verbatim, but I'll skip over a little bit. My comments and questions are on the draft changes establishing a new ABS, that's Agricultural Bulk Storage, zoning district in Dillon. And I'm presenting these comments before the commission on October 13th. And I'll try not to get off track, but I'll begin by saying, as I understand it, and I've followed this for 5 years now. I was looking back, it's been a while that this has been going on. The district is proposed as part of an effort to zone the potato cellar area approximately bounded by Clark and Orr Streets, Blacktail Deer Creek, and the railroad tracks. And the question I've got is, would spot zoning be an issue if the district is established and proposed for application to that area? And I'd submit that if it is, and there's no doubt that that is the motivation for this district. If it is, then I think if it is spot zoning, establishment of the district would serve no purpose outside zoning the potato cellar area. So you might consider that as far as part of the question is whether you want to go forward or not with establishing this district up front. With regard to the draft for the Title 17 ABS district, I suggest that someone go through it and edit it to improve the consistency with other districts, chapters in Title 17, and their organization and content, and eliminate duplication that's in the draft. For example, there are a couple of places where there's just a reference to another section in the Title 17, 44 and 48, 52 come to mind. There's no reason to have that duplicated in this section. So there's quite a few of my recommendations on the attachment have to do with those kinds of things. Try to clarify it and integrate it with the existing code. I would suggest that you consider maybe adding a section in 17.16, standards for specific uses for some of the requirements that you've listed. Frankly, the draft looks to me like a lot of it just bullets that were thrown out, and not really maybe a rough draft of a section of the code. But if it were me, and it isn't, I would probably ask to have this gone through again and possibly hold another hearing on a more finished draft of the proposed chapter in Title 17. I'm hoping that what has been presented isn't planned to be the final chapter that goes in there. It doesn't even come close, and it makes it very hard to actually comment on it, given the condition it's in, as far as the organization and things. It's hard to tell what's being commented on. Finally, whether existing facilities in the area zoned ABS will need to demonstrate compliance is a question concerning many of the items in section 110.110, safety, in the safety section. And there are a lot of standards, fire code, building code, safety regulations, policies, plans. There are a lot of things called out in that section 110 with no indication of what the standards, what would be included in those plans, who would review those plans, the reporting on maintenance by the property owners that's in there. Nothing about who, if there would be any reporting. There's a requirement for maintenance, regular maintenance. Would there be reporting? Would any of that be applicable to existing? If you were to zone an area, and I'll play along, if you were to zone an area that has some of these uses already existing, would those requirements be retroactive? Would they apply to the area that you've zoned? And then there's the issues of how that is actually dealt with. Anyway, I hope you'll read through that and maybe look at some of my comments on the attachment and see if you think it's really ready for prime time, or if you need to take one more iteration on it, and then have a hearing on something that's actually being proposed as a chapter in the ordinance. And again, I've attached those suggestions on this list, and I won't bore you by reading through those. I can bore you by asking you to read through them.
No, do bore us. This is a public hearing. We gotta take handouts.
They'll be in the minutes. It'll be in your minutes.
We want a discussion, Ed, in 10 minutes.
I gave you the thumbnail.
We have people that are asking if they can be let into the Zoom meeting.
In the waiting room.
Yeah.
If you could just read it, because people online, on Zoom, Facebook, they can't read this far away.
Well, you guys can't take action until you've approved the minutes. I mean, I'm trying to save some time here.
Right, but we're going to discuss it in the next meeting, which is,
Oh, I see what you're saying. You won't have the letters the next meeting at all.
there's some there, no, at least it's read, so people via Zoom,
All right.
these others can actually hear.
All right, well, it's,
That's why I said, you don't bore us.
Yeah.
It's public comment. We want to
well,
hear.
I may take most of the rest of the half hour here.
Go fast.
So, all right, so
Thank you.
I made these suggestions by the sections in the draft code, so that's one way to follow it. And for example, now some of these are just examples. I think that it would pay to lay out one of the existing district definitions and lay it parallel to this and try to organize this section the same way those other districts are. So I'll start out with the first thing in all of the districts is a section on intent and purpose. And that's not given for this in this draft. The second thing I'd say moves the definitions in section .010 to chapter 17.108, which is where all the definitions are. In fact, you've already moved in a couple of sections, you've moved them into 108. In subsection F, where it defines commercial storage facility, the term commercial activities seems to be very broad. It doesn't seem consistent with what it appears to be the reasoning behind establishing this district. So what would be excluded? Also, what are retail materials? That also seems to be a real fuzzy, sort of a general term. And there are a few others in the code. I didn't try to get everything even on this attachment. Sections .020, .030, and .040. And again, I'm leaving off the 17.12345 and just giving you the subsect or the sections. I would suggest combining the contents of authorized uses section. The contents that combine and authorized uses, I would suggest putting those in a section consistent with other districts. In other words, the authorized uses are given in a table. So there's a use table for the other districts, and use the PA and C codes like you've done for the other districts in Title 17. Uses not listed are not allowed, so you don't have to call out the ones that aren't allowed. Also in those three sections, 20, 30, and 40, I would drop individual storage unit, traffic, and so on and so forth, the individual storage units, it seems to me would be inconsistent with the other uses. And I think there was a question mark, or should there be a limit or something in the draft. I would just drop individual storage units. You want people in and out where they're storing oil and fertilizer and even potatoes. We used to be able to go down and get potatoes when they were cleaning things out when I was growing up. Clarify what a commercial storage facility is. And that relates back to the definitions. I already mentioned that in the definitions. Section 050 combines several sections in other district chapters. In other words, those are split out in different sections. 050 deals with height, area, setbacks, those kinds of things. In the code, those each have separate subsections. And so that if it were me, I would try to structure it consistent with the rest of your code. Also 050, question, what does lot area mean? What about lot coverage? Is that what you were trying to say, was lot coverage or lot area? Or is lot coverage not mentioned? What are elevator legs? I think I have an idea what they are, but it might not hurt to have a definition if you're using that term. And it seems to me 125 feet is awfully high for anything, but I've never been to New York, so maybe not. I've been to some big cities too, but that's 9 stories high. So probably need some beacons or something on there, I don't know. Not an expert on any of that. Section 60 through 100, .060 through .100, seem to be either not needed as they just refer to some chapter in Title 17, or could/should be incorporated in the reference chapters. So, for example, 060 fencing. It simply says fencing should comply with the requirements of Chapter 1712. So that you don't need to say that here, I don't think. Also, if you've got some special fencing things, that might be something to include in that 17.16 requirements for specific uses. I don't know. But In 060 is not needed. That's fencing. That's what I just mentioned. 070 says no landscaping is required except at the boundary with the residential district. And I'd say first, if landscaping is required for virtually all other districts, why wouldn't it be required for ABS district? And secondly, what landscaping would be required at the ABS residential district boundary? Nothing specifies what that is if it isn't the landscaping that's required for other uses. Section .080 should be eliminated, with the second paragraph incorporated in 17.44.040, maybe subsection B for consistency. There's a couple of these sections, 44, on the lighting. I think the lighting may not be, I'd have to look again, but there are a couple of these sections in the existing code that also call out specific requirements for a particular district, like the M1 district or something like that. And that might be an easier way to do it. In the lighting section, call out whatever the requirements are for the ABS district, if they're different from the regular ones. Section 090, it could or maybe should be eliminated, with the second paragraph incorporated in 17.48.020, maybe a subsection K. The subsections go up through J in there. They go up, there's only one subsection in 44.040. The spaces are identified in table 48-2 for warehousing, storage, or handling of bulk goods, which I don't know if that would match up with the requirements for this agricultural bulk storage or not, but there are parking requirements specified in 17.48 for the bulk goods. Section .100 is not needed, as it just references 17.52, and that's the signs one. So if the signs are the same as 17.52, you probably don't need to repeat it. Section .110, safety, looks like, I don't know where that came, it looks like sort of an initial list of things that came out of a brainstorming session or something. Maybe it came out of some other code that was being used as a model, I don't know. But this is what I was talking about a minute ago, where there's a safety plan / containment plan to contain product spills from bulk storage tanks and prevent runoff or leaching. Are you going to have any standards for those safety plans? Do they already exist? If it's an existing facility that DEQ or somebody requires them, that seems like just sort of a throw it out there thing that if I were asking to be zoned ABS, I'd probably want to know more about what the requirement is there than that. And that goes for some other things on this list. I counted eight items that are listed there, and they almost all beg the question of, well, what do I do with this kind of thing? Where did it come from, and why is it there? Kind of thing. And again, maybe there's something else in the code or other Dillon statutes, ordinances that require these things anyway. So again, .110, the section says safety plan, containment plan. Another one was will some or all requirements in the second, third, fourth, and sixth requirements be applied to existing facilities in area zone ABS? If so, will they be verified by the city? Will the operator maintain records to be reviewed by the city? Item 5 is, and I just numbered them, item 5, it's sentence paragraph 5, begins with all new construction is confusing at best. it seems to imply that setbacks adopted, quote, adopted by the city are part of the fire code. What would the setback be? City, the fire code, the maximum of either, or something else? So again, this section in particular seems to be pretty rough. Item 7 requires fire safety and air and water requirements to be met. Same question, will existing facilities in any areas to be zoned ABS need to demonstrate compliance? So there's a couple of those questions, and I kind of did that quick overview, and I mentioned both those before, so hope that helps.
Thank you for your comment. Any other public comment at this time? Ed, would you mind wiping that down before you leave there?
Not at all.
And if anybody else, when you're done, you could just take a minute and wipe down.
I should have thought of that when I saw the fuel section.
Thank you.
What's that?
I'm just turning it off so we can get it out of there.
Oh, you got your yeah, and I was standing over here. I was trying not to spray that way.
So with that being said, Mr. Chairman, would you take a second to acknowledge our Zoom members so therefore they're on the record, please? Whether they speak or not, they still would have signed in, so we need to acknowledge them at this meeting, please.
Do we read them off? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, please, because I'm out of my glasses.
Looks like we've got Eric Troth, Nathaniel Freeman, Marge, Sharon, I don't know what Sharon's last name is, Mike Reagan, who's here, was here, Craig Zaspel, Kevin Weiner, iPhone Dave, there you go.
Probably Dave Cotton.
Can you just clarify, please?
Eric Schumacher, Louise Bruce, Emily Freeman.
Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Chairman, I'm Mary Jorwer, and I live at 525 South Pacific Street. As part of City Council, I regularly let not only the people in my ward, but the people in all 4 wards know different situations that are coming up that might affect them. And as I did with this situation, after our COVID cases went sky high, I recommended that all people who wish to come and make a comment tonight to please do so in writing, and that I would make sure that you had their comments. I would read them into the record, and that they should make sure that they zoom in if possible, and if they couldn't zoom in, to at least stream the meeting. So that's where we have all these people. So I'm going to go ahead and very quickly read the written comments I have. I will give them to you when I'm finished. And at the end, I'll read my comment. The first comment is from Montana Trout Unlimited. Dear Dillon Zoning Commission, on behalf of the Montana Trout Unlimited members, including hundreds who call the local watersheds home, we do not approve of the newly proposed zoning district agricultural bulk storage district in Dillon. Chartered in 1964, MTU represents nearly 4,500 individual Trout Unlimited members and friends, and is the umbrella organization for 13 separate TU chapters around the state. Montana's TU mission is to conserve, protect, and restore cold water fisheries and watersheds in Montana. ABS presents a clear and unnecessary threat to water quality in Blacktail Deer Creek and downstream to the Beaverhead River. The change in zoning would allow for uncontrolled quantities of hazardous and non-hazardous materials to be stored regardless of experience and knowledge of the handler, and without environmental concerns or proper oversight. The site, in consideration, extremely close to surface water and lies directly above the alluvial, near surface groundwater, aquifers of the two in-town waterways. A spiller leak at this site has the potential to go undetected and could contaminate groundwater and eventually Blacktail Deer Creek and the Beaverhead River. The Beaverhead River is one of the main economic drivers in Beaverhead County, contributing over $5 million annually to the local economy. That comes from Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks 2014 economic survey. The Beaverhead River has multiple issues, including but not limited to low water, warm water, algae blooms, nutrient and metal impairments, and stormwater runoff. Another threat to the local river ecosystem is unjustifiable. We believe that clean and safe water for drinking, agricultural use, recreation, and wildlife are at risk if the site is zoned ABS. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. Cliff Edgington, he is the Jefferson Watershed Project Manager of the Montana Trout Unlimited. So they are against the proposed ABS district, creation of an ABS district.
Is he local, or is Cliff Edgington? Is he a Dillon resident?
No.
Okay.
That hasn't, we don't, we have everybody comment. Okay,
Just for clarification.
My next comment is from Mrs. Emily Freeman. She writes, as a mother of small kids living a couple of blocks from the location in question, I absolutely oppose the zoning change. In spite of travel guidelines for semis in our town, we regularly see huge loaded trucks traveling down Washington and on the way to the silos. It creates wear and tear on our residential street, but more importantly seems incredibly unsafe in a part of Dillon where young kids and families enjoy the freedom to walk, ride bikes, and play in the neighborhood. Increasing truck traffic in this area will mean that this is no longer a wise thing for families to let their children do. Altering a culture that is unique and wonderful to this town. Additionally, the idea of hazardous chemicals in storage and being transported within spitting distance of our house is disturbing, given the very real possibility of earthquakes and other natural disasters in our region. The creek that runs through that spot is part of a watershed that brings massive amounts of money into our region each year with recreational tourism, in addition to providing opportunities for local families to fish and swim. Why would we risk the all too likely possibility of chemical runoff into these waters? This proposed zoning change feels like a bad move for Dillon on various fronts, and I strongly oppose the passage.
What was the name of that one?
Her name is Mrs. Emily Freeman, and she lives on Clark Street, I think, or Washington Street. The next person is from George Johnston, and he lives on Pacific Street, very close to me. Dear Zoning Commission members, please consider zoning the Dillon potato cellar area in a manner that will restrict explosive hazardous materials to the environment and toxic chemicals. This area is adjacent to residents and the Blacktail Creek. There is no entry or exit to the area without going through residential areas. These are a few of the multitude of reasons why an ABS is not an appropriate designation for this area. Certainly, you must consider the risks of the residents of Dillon and reject this designation. Having grown up in an agricultural family in Cut Bank, I was made aware at a very young age of the risks of grain elevators and dust explosions, the impact of large trucks on city streets, the hazards of fertilizers and other agricultural chemicals. These materials must be kept separate from residential and environmentally sensitive areas. South of Dillon, where Rocky Mountain Supply and Wilbur Ellis have their fertilizer plants, demonstrate the type of area where this type of storage is appropriate. Zoning is an act, when appropriately used, can enhance the residential and business aspects of a community. Please consider all the residents of Dillon in taking zoning actions. Thank you, George Johnston. He is against the creation of an ABS district classification. The next comment is from Mrs. Karen Zaspel. She writes, these are two of many concerns I bring tonight regarding the request for a new zoning category called Agricultural Bulk Storage District, or ABS. The first issue is the storage of agricultural chemicals and fertilizers in a floodplain. The second is the increasing traffic. Dear Zoning Committee members, I begin this letter with great concern regarding the request of 3 families to establish a new zoning category called ABS district in the unzoned historic use area called the potato cellar area, where potatoes, grain, seed, and bulk oil are stored. I understand that zoning is necessary, but a more restricted zoning category is needed rather than the proposed change because of the proximity to residential neighborhoods, Blacktail Creek, the floodplain, and the city of Dillon at large. I believe it is to the advantage of the city of Dillon that this area be zoned to its current and historic use and allow for no expansion, let alone storage of dangerous materials. For 17 years, my husband and I have lived on the corner of South Washington Street and Clark. In the past 3 years, the semi-truck traffic into this area has increased, notably bringing more noise, speed, and health issues due to the clouds of dust. In 2018, our corner curb began to be crushed by over the weight limit trucks turning at the corner. Depending on the decision made by commissioners on this zoning matter, the truck traffic would bring even more strain to our present lack of funding for curb and street repair, not to mention all around safety, health, real estate value, taxes, and many other concerns. Respectfully, Karen Zaspel. The next comment is from Sharon and Steve Morehouse. Dear Zoning Commission, it has come to our attention that you are considering a new zoning district called Agriculture Bulk Storage District. Due to the coronavirus uptick in our community, we will not be attending tonight's meeting, but hope to join by Zoom. Hi guys. Hopefully, many of the questions we have and others not thought of will be asked and answered this evening. Having read through the proposal, it appears that it is vague in many sections. Our greatest concern are for the safety of the residents in the proposed and surrounding areas. It is difficult to understand exactly what can and will be stored in the tanks and what the safety standards will look like. How will the increased traffic in the area affect the safety of the residents? There needs to be a lot more information shared before any vote on an ABS can be taken. Respectfully yours, Sharon and Steve Morehouse. The next comment is from, oh, this isn't good. The next comment is from Dr. Sheila Roberts and Mr. Thomas Satterley. They live at 102 East Dillon Street. In regard to Dillon Zoning Commission's proposal to create a new zoning district classification called Agricultural Bulk Storage District, adjacent to our residential district. We wish to object to the proposed zoning change that would create this ABS adjacent to the residential zone that includes our property. We provide this brief outline of our objections below. Number one, the city has failed to adequately communicate with the affected population. Although Councilperson Mary Jo O'Rourke has made after a search of the Dillon City Council website today, I could not locate an agenda for the October 13th meeting in the agenda and minutes section, or any other mention of the importance of tonight's meeting. 2, a description of the proposed zoning change in the planning and zoning. 3, if that information is available elsewhere on the website, it is odd that the 2 most obvious places to post it were omitted. Number 2, the city has failed even to begin to adequately assess environmental hazards. The Montana Department of Environmental Quality environmental assessment form is attached for your information. The materials that would be allowed to be stored on the property are inherently hazardous. Hazards include possibly probable explosives and hazardous chemical leakage into the air, soil, and water. These materials would be stored adjacent to Blacktail Deer Creek, which is another level of hazard to the environment. For example, children commonly fish in that creek and may then eat contaminated fish. Increased commercial traffic, including semi-trucks, present a real danger to the residential environment and its adults, children, and pets. Performing a Phase 1 environmental assessment is a practice in order to know whether a property is likely to prevent environmental issues or recognized environmental conditions. Recognized environmental conditions include the presence or likely presence of hazardous material, petroleum products, due to a release or probable future release. All Phase 1 environmental site assessments need to meet the standard practices set out in the ASTM E1527. Number 3, the city has apparently failed to consider liability issues to the city and resultant expenses to taxpayers. If the city goes ahead with approval of this zoning change against the wishes of nearby residents, the city could and should be legally liable for injuries and property damage. Number 4, the city has definitely failed to consider property value losses related to the proposed zoning change. The presence of dangerous chemicals, increased large vehicle traffic, increased noise, and other potential hazards will almost certainly devalue residential property nearby. Sincerely yours, Sheila Roberts and Thomas Satterley. And included with this is a form to do the Phase 1 of the EIS to assess whether there may be environmental hazards that could potentially impact the neighbors. 3, okay, so the next comment is from James Roscoe. It says, Dear Dillon's Zoning Commission, this is comments regarding the proposed zoning of an agricultural bulk storage district. Good evening, my name is James Roscoe, and I have been a resident of Dillon and Beaverhead County for over 45 years. Over that time, I have watched the Union Pacific Railroad corridor through Dillon change, mostly for the better. Old buildings have been removed, crossings have been upgraded, and Blacktail Creek restored to more of a stream rather than a ditch. Overall, to the general benefit of the community. However, the current proposal to designate an agricultural bulk storage district along the railroad within the city limits at the Potato Cellar area creates a serious public safety hazard and environmental risk and holds no community benefit. The storage of agricultural chemicals, fertilizers, and grains on the same property and in close proximity to residential areas and the fairgrounds poses a serious hazard in the event of fire or spills. In addition to increased noise and vehicle traffic, there are alternate locations for such a facility outside the city limits, as there are other railroad sidings from Frying Pan to Barrett's, where the hazards and concerns are much reduced or completely avoided. There are no benefits to the public in creating such a zoning district and creating unnecessary risks. What are the benefits to the city? Secondly, any increased large truck traffic to such a facility would overload city streets that are not physically suitable for heavy truck traffic and are already in disrepair. Would there be any load limits to vehicles accessing the site? And would any of the 3 bridges across Blacktail Creek be structurally capable of supporting such loads? The only access to the sites is through residential areas along streets that are already sustain traffic congestion when UMW classes are in session. Seasonal potato truck traffic already disrupts these neighborhoods and represents a public safety hazard. Increasing heavy truck traffic is only a cumulative adverse effect that would cause increased street damage that likely would exceed city capacity to effectively repair or maintain. I strongly oppose the designation of an agricultural bulk storage district encompassing the Potato Cellar area and request that these comments be included in the formal record for your proposal. Thank you very much, James Roscoe. The next comment is from Nathaniel Freeman. Nate is a professor at UMW. He says, Dear City Commission, thanks so much for receiving comment. I am a homeowner at 606 South Washington Street. This is, the ABS is a completely inappropriate zoning designation for a residential area. We bought our house and invested in this community because we felt it was uniquely safe and a place where our kids could grow up healthy, independent, and free from concerns about toxic chemicals in their backyard and out of area semi-trucks moving down their street. Our neighborhood is full of children and more families are moving in all the time. Homeowners are remodeling and improving their homes. Property values are going up. And this is the change that would negatively impact all of these things. This is not a choice that feels right for Dillon, and I stand in strong opposition to it. Please let me know if you would like any additional information. Thank you very much for all you do for our community. Best wishes, Nathaniel Freeman. The next comment is, you can tell that these came in pretty fast and I didn't have time to read them. The next comment is from Mrs. Charlene Logie, who lives at 615 South Pacific Street. Dear Zoning Commission, I live in a residential neighborhood 2 blocks from the railroad tracks where potato storage sheds and oil storage and now numerous tall grain bins are located. Daily trucks carrying oil travel from South Atlantic Street down Dillon Street, and in the fall, many trucks carrying potatoes venture down Cornell Street, passing through street intersections where my grandchildren ride bikes and scooters daily. And then she has it bolded in here. I oppose any additional traffic, agricultural or commercial, on the residential streets near my home. If an agricultural bulk storage zone is created and added to Dillon's zoning code, areas not already zoned as residential, such as the area near the railroad tracks, could be permitted to expand to house bulk dry fertilizer, bulk liquid fertilizer, and commercial storage facilities, which can be expected to increase trucks traveling in the residential zone. My bigger concern, however, is the danger that such storage facilities pose for a residential neighborhood in the event chemicals stored should explode. Such storage facilities do not belong in the Dillon city limits. Instead, let them be placed in the county far away from residences. If the city should approve the changes to zoning classification and allow new agricultural bulk storage in a nearby unzoned area, I fear the value of my residential property will plummet. Thank you for your consideration, Charlene Logie. The next comment is from Dr. Annalise Ripley. She lives at 324 South Washington Street. Dear City of Dillon Zoning Commission, I submit this letter in opposition to the proposed agricultural bulk storage zoning district proposed near the potato cellar area in Ward 4. The primary land use adjacent to the proposed area is medium-density residential. The neighborhoods impacted by this proposal are some of the best-kept historic neighborhoods in Dillon. Approval of an agricultural bulk storage facility in this area is incompatible with existing land use, and it threatens the residents in Ward 4 with increased truck traffic, proximity to stored and transported hazardous materials, airborne contaminants, and reduced property values. It should not be necessary to list all the reasons why it is dangerous to have semi-trucks driving through a residential area carrying bulk quantities of hazardous materials. The impacts on residential safety, road stability, noise, and dust levels are self-evident. To approve this proposed land use within an established residential area with no provision nor required infrastructure investments is in direct opposition to the purpose of zoning. As a citizen and resident of Dillon, I expect the Zoning Commission to segregate incompatible land uses, ensure public safety, and preserve the character of our community. This proposal does none of those things. I encourage the Commission to reject the ABS zoning proposal and to focus your efforts on including the area into the existing medium-density residential zone. Thank you for your consideration, Annalise Ripley. The next the next comment is from Wendy Reidenauer. I know I messed that up. Wendy Reidenauer and Kevin Weiner, residents of Dillon. They live on, I believe, Washington Street. The proposed ABS zoning. This letter is to express our concerns regarding the proposed ABS zone at the west end of Clark Street in a residential neighborhood within the city of Dillon. Our primary concern is the public safety and health hazards this proposed zoning will increase. 18-wheeler trucks already frequent Atlantic Street adjacent to the college and the residential neighborhood along Clark Street pose a danger to pedestrians, children, and pets. Trucks also stir up a substantial amount of dust along Clark Street. The resultant haze is visible after trucks have passed by, and the air pollution causes increased respiratory symptoms in those individuals with allergies and asthma. Furthermore, the noise created by trucks passing by, some of which who use their Jake brakes, is loud enough that all conversations are halted until the trucks pass. The aeration fans for the bulk grain storage facilities also add to the noise level within the residential neighborhood. And additional storage facilities will only worsen the problems associated with this facility. Our other concern with the proposed ABS zone is the potential hazards associated with bulk fertilizers stored within the city limits, especially near bulk grain and bulk fuel storage facilities. Fire and explosions can result from grain dust accumulation in grain storage facilities alone, and when combined with bulk fuel and bulk fertilizer, the risk of an explosion increases. Furthermore, the entire storage facility is adjacent to Blacktail Creek, a tributary of Beaverhead River, a trout fishing destination that could potentially suffer due to any contaminant breach. Sincerely yours, Wendy Riddenauer and Kevin Weiner, residents of Dillon, Montana. The next comment is from Mrs. Marie Habner. Dear Zoning Commission, I am adamantly opposed to the creation of this district in proximity to any land occupied by businesses or homes. These kinds of storage facilities are hazardous due to the flammability of fertilizer and the potential risk to human health by exposure to toxic substances being loaded into and out of storage facilities. It is difficult to imagine that this is even a possibility that you would even consider creating the ABS. Sincerely yours, Marie Habner. The next concern is from, I think he's a man, Mr. Zeno Beatty. And he addresses this to Mayor Mike Clapton and Mr. Todd Hazelbaker. Dear sirs, I would like to follow up on my conversation with Todd Hazelbaker about the proposed zoning district. My understanding...
Mary Jo, that one was actually in the packet here. So if you would like to read it, you can, but it was actually here when we got here, so.
Oh, great.
Just, you can read it if you like, but it was.
Well, since you're going to discuss it, I'll read it through.
Okay.
I'm reading it through for my first time also. My understanding is that is that the historic use of the East Bench property in town at the west end of Clark Street has been for storage of grain, potatoes, and bulk oil. The new agricultural bulk storage zone would add bulk fertilizer, dry fertilizer, bulk liquid fertilizer, a commercial storage facility, etc. My concerns are twofold. One is access to the property. The main way in is to come off Atlantic onto Clark Street. This is a residential neighborhood and trucks are coming in day and night year-round. Most obey the speed limit and do not use exhaust brakes, but some come in fast and use the brakes in very loud, and it's very loud for everyone, and the speed is not good for stopping quickly with kids and pets around. On the way out, based on new signs that have been put up, there is no north or south options available until they get back to Atlantic Street. Turning north on Atlantic, especially when school is operating, is not easy with parked cars, traffic, and pedestrians. The new zone will increase the use of property and compound the issues related to this access. On a side note, I do not believe that any form of dust control has been used on Clark Street this year. We used to see a street sweeper once or twice a year, but that is no longer the case. The trucks kick up a lot of dust, however, that is easy to mitigate. The other concern is with the new permitted uses of the property. Is it really a good idea to have bulk fertilizer storage in a residential part of town? If there are issues and a major accident happens, who is liable? And who is it worth? Who is liable, and is it worth the risks? I understand how important farming and ranching are to the community and fully support it. Dillon and Beaverhead County are the best places in the country, in my view. My guess is that there are other options available for fertilizer, and the increased use of the facility is not a good idea, is not a good long-term solution for this town. Sincerely, Zeno Baker. The next comment is from Bill Dwyer, and he says, fellow commissioners and citizens, my name is Bill Dwyer. I own a home on the corner of South Pacific and Clark. I am very familiar with the neighborhood traffic patterns over the years, since my family has owned this home since the mid-1970s. There has always been truck traffic on Clark, sometimes more, sometimes less. It seems seed potato business is seasonal. I have noticed with some alarm an increase in truck traffic over the last year or two. It is definitely noisier, dirtier, and less safe for residents now than a few years or a few decades ago. I applaud the idea of zoning the land in question, but I am very concerned that the proposed classification would be like having no zoning at all. Fertilizer, fuel, multiple storage units, along with seed and grain storage, has to result in an even greater increase in traffic through a neighborhood that is residential in nature. The prospect of fuel and fertilizer storage is really concerning because of the greater chance of spills, fire, or explosion. I worry about the effect on Blacktail Creek. Is there a water quality assessment in the works? It should be required. A fuel spill would be disastrous for the Beaverhead River. Please zone the area something more restrictive, allowing for modest, safe development, more in keeping with its historic use. Please develop a plan to route traffic onto Railroad Avenue. Thank you for your consideration, Bill Dwyer. The next comment is from Dr. Jack Kirkley. He lives at 206 Leggett Avenue. Dear Dillon Zoning Commission members, I am sending you this letter to request that you thoroughly study the justifications, i.e. the purpose and need, as well as the potentially negative ramifications of the ABS zoning proposal that you are currently considering. Not too many years ago, Dillon was faced with a proposal to expand the use of a butcher shop, i.e. an existing meat processing business, into a livestock slaughterhouse facility. The neighboring residents were alarmed by the prospects of the unwelcome sounds and smells, as well as the potentially major waste disposal issues with such a use expansion would have undoubtedly entailed. Fortunately, that proposal for a livestock kill facility was nixed by the city, primarily because there are already more suitable places outside the city limits for such facilities to operate. But one can also argue that the unacceptable aesthetics of having a kill facility sited immediately adjacent to a residential area also played a major role in the city's decision against allowing it. Turning to the current ABS proposal, many of the same arguments could be raised about this ABS zoning issue. Number one, it is not clear to me what kinds of bulk chemicals might be legally brought into the new type of ABS zoning district. Are any of these materials potentially chemically hazardous from a human health standpoint? Or with respect to environmental spill concerns? Or with respect to flammable or explosive hazards they may present? Number two, far beyond the aesthetic considerations mentioned above for the previous expanded use proposal, what are the potential physical impacts to the people and the residential properties in the surrounding community? If some kind of major spill or other catastrophic event, such as an explosion, were to take place. Number three, about 15 years ago, Dillon suffered the effects of a sizable earthquake that caused a significant amount of structural damage to some of the buildings in this town. Earthquakes of varying magnitudes are not an uncommon occurrence in this region. To what extent are there protective features built into the current and future proposed storage structures, especially those structures for which ruptured storage tanks containing liquids could result in major spills of hazardous materials? Number four, both groundwater and surface water, such as the adjacent Blacktail Creek, could potentially be adversely affected, polluted in the event of a major spill, particularly a liquid spill such as liquid fertilizer, within this proposed new zoning district. What measures would be taken to assure that this cannot possibly occur? Number five, the most obvious question that should be considered by the Zoning Commission, as it was in the slaughterhouse proposal mentioned above, are there more suitable places outside the city limits to accommodate bulk storage of certain potentially hazardous materials, such as liquid fertilizer and dry fertilizer and other potentially hazardous chemicals, other than the residential areas that are threatened with this proposal? I believe all of these questions should be carefully considered by the Zoning Commission before this proposal is given further consideration for approval. Thank you for your consideration of my thoughts on this proposal. Jack Kirkley. The next comment is from Sarah Zitzer. Dear Zoning Commission, this letter is in reference to the Potato Cellar area, which is up for a zoning designation. I am respectfully asking you to consider the surrounding residential area when making decisions that will potentially impact all of us for years to come. Of utmost importance should be preserving and improving the integrity of the neighborhood, our city, and our community. This includes the Blacktail Creek, a tributary of the Beaverhead River, which brings our community incredible revenue. I am requesting that you not allow any changes that will infringe on the surrounding blocks with additional traffic and lighting, which would have an impact on the quality of life of our property values. I am asking you to refrain from spot zoning the Potato Cellar area as an ABS district, but instead to zone it as a C1. Respectfully yours, Sarah Zitzer, 335 South Rice Street. The next comment is from Dr. Craig Zaspel. Honorable committee members, we are Dillon residents living at 733 South Washington, across Blacktail Creek from the Irvine and Cottom Potato Cellar area for the past 17 years. A zoning change for this area is necessary, but we are concerned about the proposed bulk agricultural storage category. This new zoning would allow the storage of agricultural chemicals and explosive ammonium nitrate fertilizers very close to residential areas. And it is well known that large quantities of explosives are best stored away from residential areas. Another concern is the area being in the floodplain of the creek, referring to Montana DNRC Floodplain Hazard Management Regulations, Section 6, prohibited uses, activities and structures within the regulated flood hazard area, 6.15, storage of toxic, flammable, hazardous, or explosive materials. Let's look at Beaverhead County Floodplain Hazard Management Regulations, Ordinance number 2015-02, Section 9, Development Requirements in a Floodway, Storage of Materials and Equipment. Storage of flammable, toxic, or explosive materials shall not be permitted. There are additional examples of these kinds of regulations, such as the City of Billings, floodplain management regulations, storage of flammable, toxic, or explosive materials shall not be permitted. Respectfully submitted, Craig Zaspel. The next comment is from Christy Longley Flintoff, 207 West Seabury Street. Dear Zoning Commission and City Council, I live 2/10 of a mile from the potato silo storage area. In 2013, the explosion at the Texas fertilizer plant near Waco blew up a 50-unit apartment complex 2/10 of a mile from where the ammonium nitrate was stored. Every home within a 1/2 mile radius was significantly damaged. 15 people lost their lives, 160 to 200 people were injured. Whatever the city and the owner of the plant planned, it was not for an arson event, nor was it for the devastating explosion that rocked that community. What would Dillon be doing adding fertilizer, dry or liquid, to this area? What would Dillon be doing allowing storage or commercial storage units in a mostly residential area? Who would monitor what went into these units? No one even monitors the traffic now as it is. Certainly the zoning commission and the city could not possibly be considering securing the safety of adults, children, and homes in this and surrounding areas. Further leakage or an explosion would have a devastating impact on Blacktail Creek running through this area, not to mention the hospital, clinic, university, and railroad. Large truck traffic, more car traffic leading into the proposed storage area, bulk fertilizer tanks, chemical storage, commercial storage, and storage units are not acceptable to this homeowner and Dillon resident. These additions do not help a city attract new, safe businesses to a vibrant downtown and Montana Street commercial area. What families or empty nesters coming to Dillon for clean air, clean water, and good fishing would want to live in a town with an agriculture bulk storage district and all the potential health and safety problems? None. Thank you for your consideration, Christy Longley Flintoff. The next comment, I read through this. I'm just going to read the first page. It has this is from Mrs. Val Neely, and she did a very impressive job of writing a very detailed report on potential hazards. So I'm just going to read the first page and let you all read the next 10 or so. To the members of the Dillon Zoning Commission, I am addressing element number 2, designed to secure safety, fire, and other dangers, and number 3, designed to promote the public health, public safety, and general welfare. And am using the West Fertilizer Company explosion information as written in Wikipedia A with this article and bibliographic information attached. While a fire was being fought at the West Fertilizer Company in West Texas on April 17, 2013, an explosion quickly followed that killed 15 people and injured 160 and damaged or destroyed 150 buildings. An initial investigation determined arson, but later findings made this inconclusive. The last inspection by OSHA cited the plant for improper storage of anhydrous ammonia and violation of respiratory protection standards. After 2006, more fines were levied by the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. The plant had a long history of thefts by makers of methamphetamine. The facility lacking burglar alarms or fenced perimeters. Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano told Senate investigators that the company did not appear to have disclosed a required amount of ammonium nitrate stock combined with combustible material. The company had uninsured itself for liability. No one was ever charged for the cause of this explosion. I'm going to end Mrs. Neely's comments there. She goes on, she is reading this as a potential tale that could happen in Dillon. And she has footnoted it extensively. So I encourage you all, and she has graphs and based on how far away people live from the area. So that's her comment. I'll end, and you of course understand that she's against the ABS. I will end with my comment.
Mary Jo,
Yes?
before you do that, since you've done such a great job of reading, would you like to read a couple more?
Oh, I don't like
Well, get them all read.
Okay. I wanted to read this when I heard about it, but I didn't read it.
There weren't any in the packet emailed out.
This is dated October 13th, 2020. To the members of the Dillon Zoning Commission and City Council. My name is Danny Stroud, and I am a homeowner in the city of Dillon. I live at 234 South Rice Street, a mere 4 blocks away from the area under discussion. I am writing to implore you to consider carefully zoning for the area commonly known as the Potato Cellar area. This small tract of land is literally surrounded by homes, many of historic distinction, and all filled with families. Blacktail Creek flows through town and is directly adjacent to the Potato Cellar area. To have an anything goes zoning classification would allow for the storage of hazardous materials without consideration of those families, and the environment is irresponsible and a disservice to the community as a whole. The risks of such zoning are great. The storage of dry or liquid fertilizers, solvents, and other chemicals used in commercial activities or any other potentially harmful substances do not belong in the midst of families. They do not belong by a body of water that could easily be polluted. We, as citizens of Dillon, depend on zoning laws to reduce the risks and enhance the quality of life for all of us, not to increase risks. There are many unanswered questions. How much commercial traffic can be expected in residential areas? Who will assume the safety of children living in the area? How will the light traffic residential roadways be maintained and by whom? What will this do to my property values? If the property values decrease, so does the city's tax base. There are a multitude of reasons as to why this should not occur, and only the wishes of absentee landlords as to why it should. I would ask that you consider the good of Dillon as a whole and not focus on commerce simply for the sake of commerce. Respectfully, Danny Stroud. The next comment is from Thomas W. Stroud, PhD. Dillon Zoning Committee. I am a resident of Dillon who lives and owns property within 4 blocks of the proposed agricultural bulk storage site. I believe that this proposal is not in the best interest of the city nor the residents of Dillon. The current use of this unzoned area, known as the Potato Cellar, has been acceptable with fuel distribution, grain storage, and formerly seed potato processing and storage. Agricultural bulk storage is not defined, nor is it limited in the proposal. I do not want to have explosive or toxic chemicals brought into the center of residential areas on both sides of the railroad tracks. I also am concerned about the likelihood of toxic chemicals being released into the stream and the floodplain, which would also poison the Beaverhead River. I recommend instead of the proposed ABS designation that a commercial zoning be applied with the current activities grandfathered in as long as the land remains in the existing owner's hands. When the land is sold, I would like to see a transition into residential property that would recognize the need for affordable housing. My years of work on the City Council make me appreciate the efforts of the Zoning Committee to balance the use of land in the City of Dillon. In this case, I ask that you deny the use of an ABS zone and look at other alternatives. Sincerely yours, Thomas W. Stroud. I'm not going to read my long letter to you. I'm going to read my short letter.
Come on.
I think you're just sick and tired of my voice. So, okay, and these were other comments that I received that are unreadable. Unmannerly.
Inappropriate.
Pardon?
Inappropriate.
Inappropriate, yeah, the language is inappropriate. But they were, those three comments were from folks that were not in favor of the ABS, but they were uneducated as to the correct way to comment. So we'll leave those out. Okay, so my short letter is Zoning Commission, thank you so much for sitting and listening to my voice for 25 minutes. I want to just address three main things that concern me about the ABS. The first one is that we have to be honest and transparent both with ourselves and with the public. I have gone through the Zoning Commission's minutes from 2016 through 2020. I can cite more than a dozen instances in the minutes where the creation of the ABS zoning district, the creation of that idea is directly tied to the potato cellar area. So even though we are talking tonight just about the creation of that classification, we cannot divorce it from the potato cellar area, and it's naive to do so. The second thing is that I want to make clear to everyone that I am not, absolutely not, against the present and historic use that has occurred in the potato cellar area. I applaud that use and I hope it continues. Number three, the thing I would like to make adamantly clear is that the ABS classification, as it is, it proposes uses that are so dramatically different than the historic and present use of the area that it is unfathomable. I cannot even believe that we are discussing having an ABS within the city limits, but especially for the potato cellar area. But I believe that the ABS, with all its problems, and Ed gave you a couple of pages worth of problems, there are more. And there are environmental issues that will plague this city from now until the end of time if this zoning classification is created and becomes part of Chapter 17. So I implore you to not create the ABS, and especially any zoning classification which has uses that are so profoundly different than the current and historic use of the potato cellar area. Number B, when you look at, and I brought my map, but you have the beautiful maps behind you also. Where is my map? Oh, here it is. When you look at these beautiful, beautiful maps of Dillon that are in color, and this is a ward map, actually, that Raymond did. But when you look at these maps and you look at all these blue areas, and this is purple and blue, and then it goes into orange, all this up here, all this this is all residential. I mean, when you look at a map of Dillon, 90% of the area is taken up in residential uses. And we are talking about creating a classification for a piece of land that's as big as the tip of my finger. I mean, it is just, I'm not sure what the exact size of that piece of land is, but it's a few acres. And when you put it relative to the residential uses within Dillon, it's just hard to imagine that we would create something that was so dangerous in such a small little piece of ground when we live in a county that goes on forever. There is tons of area where there's ample land and ample available land for storage of all those chemicals and dangerous things. They shouldn't be inside the city of Dillon. And the last thing I want you to consider is that Mr. Wassel asked what was the genesis of the ABS. And if you read all of the minutes of the Zoning Commission since 2016, you get a really good feel of how this has happened. And one of the major landmarks in deciding on an ABS was you had invited the landowners to come and chat with you and let you know what they would like. There were 2 landowners who talked about their present use and their historic use and how they would like that to continue. There was one landowner who spoke up and said that he had bought the property free of encumbrances and he expected to utilize the land and sell the land without encumbrances. From there, the ABS was born. That was one person. That was one person. And this is a big town of over 4,000 people. So I encourage you to consider the thoughts and concerns of those 4,000 people as you consider the thoughts and the concern of that one person. So I thank you for all your hard work reading the minutes from 2016 on. This has taken up an incredible amount of time and effort on your part, and I thank you for it. Because I agree with you that it does need to be zoned. I just don't think it should be an ABS. Thank you very much.
Chairman.
Thank you for your comment.
Some people,
Cliff Stout would like to speak next.
Okay.
And I'll wipe this down.
We'll go ahead and turn the time over to Cliff Stout
And Seton.
And Celine Stout.
and Celine.
So we live at 123 East Cornell Street, which is the other side of the street from where this zone would occur. So we literally live 50 feet away. We're not opposed to the current use of the area and not opposed to having it zoned, but what is concerning is how vague the ordinance is. And so I have a few notes here, and I apologize if they're kind of haphazard, but so what I think is that it needs to be, the proposed zoning needs to be narrowed in what it's going to do, what is allowed in the area, because you don't want to, as many people have commented already, we don't want to store explosives in the area. And there are all sorts of regulations that go with that anyway, involving ATF and FBI and state agencies as well. But if you did end up storing explosives there and they were to start sweating, out of personal experience, you'd end up having to evacuate a 1 mile radius area, potentially. Maybe more, depending on how much is actually stored there. And last time I checked the map, that'd be about all of Dillon. So you could end up potentially having to evacuate 4,000 people. And that could be quite a nightmare. Also, ammonium nitrate, I don't know the exact number, but somewhere around 500 pounds, I believe, is where the ATF steps in and starts providing oversight. So once you hit 500 pounds of ammonium nitrate, you're already talking a hazardous level, a quantity of material that could potentially be destructive to the community and everybody, of course, who lives right next to it. A lot of this type of stuff should be stored outside of a residential area, outside of town. There are plenty of areas out there. There have been magazines of explosives just a short distance south of town. Also, there's fertilizer storage elsewhere as well. And I think that's a better area than inside town. Not to mention various chemicals that you could potentially store. Also, that would fall under it, the way it's written, the way I understand it, like cyanide, hydrochloric acid, thorium sulfate. They're all actually pretty nasty stuff. And I don't know who in town would even need to use something like that, and if somebody did someday in the future, I don't know why you'd want to go in town anyway, and I would assume that you'd rather go to a safer area where if you did have an issue, you'd get away from people and away from water, and that would be outside of town again. One point that was mentioned earlier as well is how many people could be impacted by this. You're talking about, if you view it from the explosive side, you're talking about 4,000 people, almost 5,000 maybe, compared to how many people would benefit from the change in zoning. And so in the end, it's really balancing, is it just one person's need or 5 people's need versus 4,000 or 5,000 people. And you're talking about potentially catastrophic outcomes. And from a risk assessment perspective, that increases your hazard pretty quick when you have catastrophic outcomes. Even if you can mitigate that hazard. So in the end, I think it's fine the way it is. However, it needs to be zoned, yes, and the current use I'm fine with, and I'm fine with putting together a better plan moving forward, but I think the current writing is just way too vague. It has way too many potential, way too much potential for misuse.
Just to add to that, the value of our whole neighborhood will be definitely impacted. Just even if in the near future nobody will take advantage of that zoning and store explosive or anything dangerous in the near future, the fact that it's zoned that way doesn't protect us from, who knows, in 10 years, whatever, it would be right within their right to store stuff there when everybody has forgotten about it and nobody's looking at it anymore, and who knows, down the line something happens, chemicals are forgotten there for a long time, it's not leaking, and the Black Hill stream is right there next to it, and again we live 50 feet from it. So it is important to pay attention even to the way in the future when nobody's going to think about it anymore and will even forget how it is done. So it is very important to make sure it is done properly right now for like 8-20 years.
And on that, forgetting things, the explosion that occurred in Beirut, that was actually a bunch of ammonium nitrate that was completely forgotten about. people didn't even remember that it was stored there. We don't want the same thing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Anybody else? You
Mr. Chair, this meeting's gone on for quite a period of time, so with your indulgence, I'm not going to take up very much time. I've got a couple of items. First, I'd like to compliment Mary Jo for her diligent presentation. I'd like to ask her to speak at my funeral, either pro or con is her choice. My first point is there was a gang email which was sent to all ward representatives and the mayor on October 5th by Jason Glenn of 907 South Pacific Street. It was 3 paragraphs, and the salutation was to dear Mr. Schwant and Mr. Graham. Is that in your packet?
I never saw it.
I never saw it.
Okay. Rather than reading it,
Why don't you read it?
we accept.
Read it.
Yeah, read it.
Read it, Rick. Read it.
Pardon me?
Read it, please.
Okay, the reason why I'm reluctant is all of the points are redundant. They've all been addressed previously in the letters that were read by Mrs. O'Rourke, and also in my comments and Mr. Stout's comments. So I'll read it if you'd like, but I think it simply means for time considerations would be just to get a copy of it from one of the ward representatives. Would that be acceptable?
No.
No, please read it.
Read it.
I never received it. As a ward. This is a public hearing.
Oh, okay.
We need the information now, please. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just trying to think time.
No,
I'll read it.
not 10 yet.
This is October 5th from Jason Glenn of 907 South Pacific. Dear Mr. Schwant and Mr. Graham, I am a Dillon homeowner and resident of Ward 4 and am writing you, members of the Dillon Zoning Commission, concerning the pending zoning of the area known as the Potato Cellar. It has come to my attention that there is a proposal to create an agricultural bulk storage district for city zoning purposes, and that this new designation could be used to zone the Potato Cellar area. While I do not necessarily disagree with the creation of an agricultural bulk storage zoning district, I am not sure such a district is a wise or safe use of land within city limits, and I strongly disagree with the Potato Cellar area should receive such a zoning designation. The areas surrounding the Potato Cellar are residential, and any zoning designation which dictates what can happen on the Potato Cellar property now and in the future should ensure those activities are compatible with the surrounding area, which happens to be primarily residential. What I find most troubling about the proposed agricultural bulk storage zoning district as it applies to the Potato Cellar area is the possible storage of bulk fertilizers within city limits, adjacent to residences and within the floodplain of Blacktail Creek. Fertilizers stored in large quantities can potentially be very dangerous and have no place being stored in the middle of neighborhoods are on land immediately adjacent to streams. Certain fertilizers, when ignited, can cause serious explosions and/or extremely toxic fumes. For example, a fertilizer explosion in the town of West Texas in 2013 killed 15 people, injured over 160 people, and damaged 150 buildings. Also, do not forget one of the key ingredients in the bomb used to attack the Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma in 1995 was fertilizer, and it was only a relatively small amount. If there was a leak into Blacktail Creek, not only could the stream be severely impacted, so could downstream waters such as the Beaverhead and Jefferson rivers. Regardless of any required safety precautions that may be included in the creation of the agricultural bulk storage zoning district, it is a bad idea with the potato cellar area. Given the makeup of the surrounding neighborhoods, the risk is just too high. I also have concerns about the current and potential future amount of truck traffic in and out of the potato cellar area. While truck traffic associated with the current activities at the potato cellar area through my neighborhood does vary depending on the time of year, I am bothered by the high number of trucks using Pacific Street during times high use. Any zoning designations to the potato cellar area need to strictly limit, and if anything, force a decrease of truck traffic on South Pacific and South Washington streets. I have witnessed large trucks speeding in front of my house and would prefer not to see those trucks on my street at all. I would support using an existing commercial zoning district designation such as C1 and grandfathering in current uses of the potato cellar area. Any further growth should be strictly regulated, and at the time of any future sale, I believe that zoning designation should be reviewed and revised to bring the area to a use closer to and more compatible with the surrounding residential neighborhoods. Increases in commercial activity at the potato cellar area should not allow any increases in noise, especially at night. Increases in truck traffic through residential neighborhoods, creation of light pollution, creation of air pollution, and should not pose risks to the safety or property values of the surrounding residential neighborhoods. Thank you for your service to the city of Dillon and your time in this matter, respectively, Jason Glenn. Item number 2. Much has been said of the concerns in terms of the surrounding neighborhoods on 3 immediately adjacent sides of the property, referred to as potato cellar. Not much, if anything, has been said about the other side, which is the Union Pacific Railroad. Due to the lack of advertisement of this issue, I doubt that the Union Pacific Railroad is even aware of this at the moment. Though if they were, I suspect that they would have something to say about the matter. For the reason that Dillon is on the main line of the Union Pacific north-south. The Union Pacific uses Dillon as a switching yard in order to add locomotives, substitute locomotives, take locomotives off of the train, move cars around, take cars off, add cars, etc. So with those switching facilities, there is additional traffic parked, including locomotives and cars, in our area. Some of it involving the existing facility at the potato saw. If you add the additional risks that have been discussed in terms of fire and explosive risks, I believe the railroad would have quite a bit to say about that, because the potential is that their operations could be totally interrupted and brought down to zero in terms of the north use and south use of their right-of-way for a considerable period of time until they could bring in repair facilities to deal with the debris, the track and bedding problems that would be caused by such a fire or explosion. And so their loss of use and interruption of services could be considerable. If this proposal does go forward, I would suggest at a bare minimum that the cover that should be required if these added uses are to be part of the agricultural bulk storage district, that the added uses would create a need for a cover of at least $25 million. My last item is this. Dr. Moon, in his diligent presentation, had me at a disadvantage, and that disadvantage is this. I asked for a complete packet, copies of the agendas and the packets to go along with the public meeting and the following zoning commission meeting. None of that I picked up this morning due to the holiday included in regards to this agricultural bulk storage district. So I've not been able to review as a member of the public what Dr. Mooney was able to review in detail, and assumably other members of the public are in the same boat. So I would suggest that at a bare minimum, in terms of if this matter is going to proceed, that it be allowed additional time for the public to review the provisions of the proposed district in detail so that we could comment on it further. And that's all I have, and thank you for your indulgence.
Thank you for your comment. Any other public comment at this time? Anybody from home viewing via Zoom?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, we can.
Okay, this is Dave Cotton. I would just like to say, I don't know about the other property owners down there, but, I have no plans of any fertilizer, dry fertilizer, and I know Kent doesn't. He was thinking of a small liquid fertilizer, I think at some point in time for him, but this idea of this big fertilizer plant, and nobody's using anhydrous address anymore, and so all that is all out of context. And then the other thing I thought was kind of funny is a lot of Mary Jo O'Rourke's letters said about the potato truck traffic down there, and I have not used that facility in 20 years, since 2000, with potato trucks. So there hasn't been a potato truck down there for 20 years. So I don't know where they're coming up with that. So anyway, that's just my comment. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Any other public comment at this time?
Hi, this is Jeannie Dawson. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I live at 322 South Pacific Street, and while I admit that this is, I was notified of this meeting and the hearing just this evening, I just want to share my concern about the vision and the goals of the city of Dillon and its residents in promoting an agricultural bulk storage facility near residential areas, and the overall, I guess, vision of tourism and the risks if we have some kind of spill or other unintended or unplanned consequence to the values that we all really love about Dillon in this area that might really saddle us with some costs in the future that we really aren't expecting, environmentally, economically, and in our health. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. Any other public comment at this time? Any other public comment? All right, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing at this time. We'll take a 5-minute recess and then we'll jump back into our regular.
I'm Ron Carroll, owner of Emporium 406, where you'll find unique vintage and contemporary goods. Products like autographed celebrities